Hey, Bindi, what's the biggest sales challenge founder-led or scaling tech teams face when they're first really trying to grow?
Firstly, they can't get out of their own way. They tend to be very passionate about the technology and the solution and their business, and they're passionate about their journey, which is really good, super powerful. It's important to know that journey that the founder's taken, but often they get stuck in saying, hey, we've got a great solution or we've got a great service. We want to go and pitch it out. So lots of times they don't know what the next step looks like. They have a rough idea, this perception of how to go and sell something, but lots of times they don't know what they need to do. I find that the biggest challenge is getting out of their own way. That's this challenge that founders have, and it takes a little bit of time to give them the confidence to say the team can handle it. You've got to now move out of their way, give them the space and the autonomy and the confidence and the drive to build that business and move forward.
The biggest sales challenge for founder-led tech teams is the founder.
Yeah. It's easy to say, but you've got to also understand they're very passionate about their business, and they have a responsibility for all the people that work in that organization, and it certainly is a huge challenge for them, and it keeps them up late at night, right?
Well, it's their identity, it's their passion, their lives are wrapped around this. So it makes sense that it can be really challenging psychologically and motivationally to let sales teams take over.
Yeah, exactly right. I also find that lots of times they've tried things and they've been burnt. So a lot of founders have tried things, they've been told, do this, get in front of, use this organization, this SDR, this BDR outfit out of XYZ organization to help you. But lots of times there's no strategy. There's no, how do we drive success and what does success look like? It's easy to say, hey, you know what? Success is, I want you to drive $1 million worth of business, or I want you to drive $10 million worth of business. That's great. That's the end goal. But what needs to happen to get to that point? And I often think of it this way. If you look at a kitchen and you got the head chef, and the head chef is typically actually, I would take it one step further. The founder is the head chef and the restaurateur, the owner of the restaurant, and the chef, and the sous chef, and the front office staff, all of that. The founder's been that. And what organizations need to do to be successful or to have a great meal or great experience for the folk that are coming to the restaurant, having the ability to let go and opening up creativity and letting the process take shape. I think that's a big thing that founders need to really need to understand. And I tend to spend a lot of time helping them with that process. But that journey can be daunting for a founder. How do you build this business where you have autonomy and you've got a strategy? What do you stand for? And even going back to the analogy of a restaurant, you can't have a restaurant that does Indian food, Sri Lankan food, Lebanese food. It's not going to be conducive to a really great experience, because as a person that wants to come and eat a meal, you want to have an experience. You want to enjoy a taste of a particular region of the world, right? I don't go to a Sri Lankan food place or Sri Lankan restaurant and then have Greek food. It's not what it is. And so as a founder, you got to understand, okay, what am I good at? What's my speciality? What am I going to be known for? What's my secret sauce? How am I going to take this experience to the next level? And lots of times founders tend to want to do everything to try to drive revenue, try to drive income, try to drive growth, without understanding what's your value proposition. Why would someone work with you, or why would someone come to your restaurant to partake in this great experience that you're talking about? And there's a lot of back work that needs to happen.
Yeah, it's a good analogy. Hey, in a lot of what you're putting on LinkedIn and also in the way that you're talking to leaders, you're talking a lot about selling outcomes rather than products. Can you tell me a little bit more about what that means?
Yeah. for the founders and the teams I work with. They're so used to selling service. So there might be a great dev shop. They might do a bunch of stuff on top of Copilot, or they might be really good at their managed service offering using AWS, for example, or there might be AWS and Microsoft, and they might do IBM. And they might also have a Salesforce practice. And lots of times when you look at it from a perspective of a customer, the customer is dealing with hundreds and maybe thousands of people like this organization, right? Everyone's talking about, hey, we're really good at Copilot. Hey, we're good at building AI agents. We can integrate MYB, and we can integrate into your payroll system, into your CRM system. There are so many businesses out there who can do that as well. They've got great talent, great experience. They're certified to do that. The trick is, how do you make it relevant to the customer? And lots of times it's about, what are you trying to address? And what is your solution address? It's not about AI. It's about what AI can do to address those business challenges, right? And then framing that conversation and framing the solution that makes sense. You need to figure out what the business challenge that you're looking to address, and then tie a solution to that business challenge, and then tie a very strong process on how you're going to help the customer address that business challenge. Then bring the team together so that everyone's talking everyone has the same narrative, or they're all singing off the same hymn sheet, so to speak. And that takes that's a journey. That takes time, right?
Yeah.
And then you have to shift the perception that the customer has, because the customer might think, hey, you're an XYZ partner at Microsoft. You might be a data and AI partner. You might be a great modern work partner. But what does that mean for the customer? And then really making it relevant to the customer, and then spending time with the customer. But also, I find that the solution needs to also have it, hey, what will you give as part of that solution, and what do you expect back? So I find as well, lots of times, yeah, great. You might go in and say, hey, let's do this piece of work for you, not have a solution, not have addressing a business challenge, not have the trust with the customer that you're going to deliver that, because you're building the back end as you're dealing with the customer. All of those things the customer sees, and then you start having a different kind of conversation. You start having a price conversation, rather than, hey, how are you going to help me deliver this business challenge, or this problem I have, or this compliance issue, or this new legislation that's come across? How are you going to help me address that? Then you start having conversations like, can you do it cheaper? Can you take 30% off? Can you take 40% off? I'll sign with you if you can bring it down to this number. And then you start to have a different conversation. You start to have a different relationship with your customer. And then you might think, hey, that's a quick win, but that's damaging in the future. That kind of creates this expectation that you can do things cheap, or they're not valuing the solution or the value that you bring. Rather, they just go, hey, you're a body shop, you can do something for me really cheap. And that's also what the journey has to be. The founder needs to understand where they stand in that process, and be able to let go and say, hey, customer, looks like we haven't really shown you the value that we bring. This is not for us, and walk away, or go back again, but redefine the value that you bring. But that's often a more challenging conversation, because if you create a perception already, and changing perceptions super hard, right?
It's super hard. Yeah. Hey, we've talked previously about how a lot of technology guys see selling into enterprise as the holy grail as such, but we see a ton of mistakes being made along the way when aspiring or pursuing that. Can you tell me about a common mistake that you see in that sales cadence?
Yeah, absolutely. Often enterprise is a longer sales cycle, and there's a lot of gates that you have to go through. And there's a lot of requirements. If you were to sell to, say, Westpac, as an example, you have to be on a panel, right? And that takes time. Sometimes getting onto the panel could be 6 to 12 months, could be 18 months. You need to have all that back-end stuff sorted out. You can't have gaps, because the enterprise customer will see that. Do you have a great solution offering? Are you specific to banking, or are you specific to insurance? All of those things need to be drilled down, and the enterprise customer needs to see that. If you go in and say, hey, we can do this stuff for you, and do it almost on the fly, you're not bringing any value to them, because a lot of these enterprise organizations will have large dev teams, large engineering teams, and they'll look at these boutique outfits or these small organizations to give them more nimble experience, which means that, hey, if I use your service, I can get to the outcome much faster. You're going through a huge cycle of going through a panel, you're signing up an SI, getting a massive dev team working on this project, a big engineering team working on this project. It's going to cost me hundreds of thousands of dollars. I might be able to use our organization, and you might be able to accelerate the outcome because you're a much smaller team, you're a local team, you've got those, you're bringing that value. It might cost me, it might only cost me 50 or 60K in relation to a 100K outcome. But it means I can get faster because you're already a specialist in this space. You understand us, you understand our industry, you understand our challenges. You've already got a solution up and running. Now let's get it fast. Let's get it in there. And that's a really interesting conversation to have with an enterprise customer. But if you don't have that, and going and sitting in front of Westpac or CBA or the tax office or a defense, you're not going to get the outcome that you want.
Yeah. Yeah. Hey, speaking of value, let's talk about the concept of fractional CROs. In what ways does a fractional CRO unlock opportunity and drive value that is different than going out and hiring a full-time CRO?
That's a good question. And I find that the fractional CRO is becoming more and more for SMBs and SMEs. Let me give you an example. Let's say you have an organization that's co-founder is led or founder led. They got great services. They've got great experience. They've fallen into specialization in a particular industry or segmentation, and they don't know what to do. Do they go and hire a BDR? Do they go and hire an SDR? They don't have a great brand strategy. They don't have a marketing team working for them. So all of these different teams or cogs that have to come together to drive an outcome or drive that revenue forward is not there. And so lots of times you'll find is that there's not enough budget to spread, right? They don't have enough funding to have all of those resources full time in their organization. So they need someone to come in that has experience building those mechanisms, but then instead of paying the 250 grand, 300, 400, 500K for a CRO with full comms, you pay a fraction of that. You get the value that you need, and that person is being utilized for that time frame, right? So think of it like that. Think of it as if you were to invest in, say, an AWS cloud environment, and you don't need servers running 24/7, right? You just want to be able to use the technology when you need it. It's the same way. A CRO is the same mechanism. You're still getting strength, the experience, the connection, the ability for that person to set up your partnerships, set up your alliances with vendors, help you build your marketing team, or you could be a part-time marketing team that you need, help you build the GTM, the strategy, understand your strengths, you want to do a SWOT analysis. So CRO will come and do that, but they're not on staff 5 days a week, 8 hours a day, 12, 11 and a half months a year. They're not on staff. You're not having to worry about paying all of those additional costs that I incurred, payroll, tax, and that's just as an example, right? So you're getting to use the CRO's strength and capabilities as you need it. And then the other time you can spend focusing on delivering on it. So you can get the CRO to come in and say, hey, this is what you need to do. This is what we're going to do. This is the mechanism that's in place. Now go and do, right? And I'll come back to you next week when you've done that. That means that it gives the co-founder or founders the ability to get the guidance, get the support, get access and really build their business, and then get their business in a position that they're moving forward, right? And then they can decide what they want to do going forward. And after they're running their business, their revenue's coming through, they got their marketing team, they got their strategy, they know what they need to sell, they know how they want to sell it, who they need to speak to. All of that's done, it's documented, and then they can go and say, okay, now our revenue is 4x now, it's 10x now. We can then bring someone full time because we need that person to be on the ground every day as we grow to the next phase of the business. I guess CRO is really great for those ISVs that are looking to move to the next phase of their growth and let go of being founder-led in that space, where the founder can then become a CEO of an organization and become more strategic. Let the CRO handle the building of that mechanism.
Yeah, wow. Hey, you bring a pretty heavyweight background with extensive experience at Microsoft and Salesforce and deep inside their ecosystems. How does that experience shape the capabilities that you're bringing into ISVs as a fractional CRO?
Yeah, that's a really good question. I'm gonna go back to that restaurant chef analogy. I look at that. I've got the training from the Michelin star restaurants, and I've worked under top chefs. I've worked phenomenal leaders, let's say in the restaurant game, right? And I understand that. I've now got these years of experience doing the hard yards, cutting the vegetables and the onions and dicing it up and learning under the tutelage of these Michelin star chefs. Now I have the ability to share that with the rest of the world or share that with my clients, right? So they're getting that value. And why is this important? Is not only do I bring in that experience, but I also bring in the connections, right? So now I have a good relationship with those Michelin star restaurateurs. Yeah, I can go and say to them, hey, I can talk to them about what things work, or collaborate with them on what's the next experience going to look like. And this is a very similar thing I bring when I was at Microsoft for over, I think it was about 12 years at Microsoft, and I had Salesforce, about 4.5 years at Salesforce. And both these have been in platform roles, which means it's an interesting thing. It means it's a complex sale. So I understand the complex sale, and I understand what needs to happen to be able to close those deals. And it's not just even selling into enterprise. I've sold into enterprise, I've sold into SMB, SME, into government, federal, local, and you understand what those personas are. And the cool thing is, the mechanism that you have to understand or you have to build is consistent across whether you work at Microsoft, Salesforce, work at a small ISV. It is understanding the persona, understanding how you want to sell, understanding your go-to-market strategy, understanding the value proposition that you build, understanding the whole storytelling mechanism, right? I learned these skills working at these great companies, and I feel like these companies are a great mechanism for you to learn multiple skills. So you understand the marketing mechanism, you understand adoption, you understand how do you get people to start using the products and services that you have, but also keep using them, and how do you be relevant? And the importance of also partnerships and alliances. How do you work with distributors? How do you work with other partners? How do you work with other ISVs that don't do what you do, right? How do you bring them together and build this go-to-market strategy? And I often think sales is a team sport. I always say this. Sales is a team sport. That means that you can't do everything, and if you're expected to do everything, you're going to fail. And I learned all of these things, these skills, and what not to do, and what happens when you do something that it doesn't meet that kind of strategy or that mechanism, you fail. I've had years where I haven't made my number, and that's because I haven't leveraged everyone. I haven't leveraged the skills and the superpowers of other folk in my team to drive that number. And where I've done really is where I would work strongly with the partner community. I work strongly with the SDRs and BDRs. I work strongly with the AEs. I work strongly with leadership. How do you get leadership in front of a customer to help build trust? And how do you get that commitment, that ability to say, hey, I'm going to be here with you as you take this journey. And it's not just me saying that, it has to come from all the different levels. Now, I learned all of that through great mentors and great leaders that I worked with, and also great GMs and CEOs of companies. It was really wonderful. Like, I had the experience, and I was very fortunate to work with the folks like Steve Vamos at Microsoft and Tracy Fellows and Pete Marlowe and all those guys, and how they build a whole overall business, and Norbert Hainel. And I'm mentioning these names because I value that relationship that I built, and I learned a lot from those guys. And even now, they're still in the industry. They're still doing great things. They're still helping businesses grow. And I love it. I listen to a lot of their content, and I'm also learning as well. But it's what I bring the ISVs. I go, let me help you through the hard yards I've put and the connections I built. Another good thing is ISVs, one of the other challenges they have is how do they connect into the machine, the huge machine that's orchestrating growth and success and technology in Australia, in New Zealand, in Singapore, in Japan, in China. How do you connect to that? So that's another thing I bring in, is that I bring that relationship straight forward. So I go, hey, you're an ISV, you're doing some great work with the Microsoft technology. Let me bring you in front of these folk at Microsoft. Then we can pitch together the value that we bring, addressing all of the things I was talking about, in having a really great process, great back office, great technology, great mechanism to deliver the outcomes to the customer, great relationship building capabilities, and then go to Microsoft and say, hey, or Salesforce or AWS, and say, hey, let me help you drive growth of the platform, right? But I need you to help me do this. And a lot of the Microsoft folk would remember this. We talk a lot about the go-dos, and we talk about a lot of the gives and gets. What do I give and what do I get? And you have that conversation with the right people at a vendor, at a partner, and really build that relationship and go, okay, let's go together and let's be successful together. Let's drive that outcome for the customer together. And it's phenomenal. There's been instances where Microsoft have worked with an ISV and said, hey, I love what you're doing. I love the way that you're positioning this problem, this challenge the customers are facing. I love what you've built on the back end. How about we collaborate together and go to market together? Now, that's phenomenal. And that's one thing that I feel my time at Microsoft and Salesforce and in the ecosystem of over 25 years allows me to share as part of that CRO model with founders.
Amazing. Hey, if a CEO calls you and says, Bindi, I need help, what's the first thing you ask, and what's the first thing you look at?
Yeah, that's a good one. It's an interesting question. The first thing is, I want to understand their purpose. Why are they why are they in this game?
Wow.
And I recently worked with a CEO, a founder, and he has an immense passion for that industry that he's in, right? Kudos to him. You can see how much passion he gets. His face brightens up, and he's so passionate about helping people, making a difference. So first thing is, I want to understand what's the driver. Now, it's important for me to understand that because that's going to translate to the customer. Our customers are people, right? They buy from people. They work with other people, but they also work with like-minded people. They want to work with someone that's also as passionate as they are. I'll give you an example of in aged care. A lot of the CEOs and a lot of the CTOs and CIOs and the CFOs, and a lot of them are super passionate about aged care. They are very passionate about care, right? They want to make sure that they're doing is the best they can to provide the best care for that resident or their customer, for example. Some of the aged care providers call them customers. So you want to make sure the CEO that you're working with, there's a great connection there. You can see that because it makes it easier to start helping them build that business out when that passion is there, when that transparency is there, and that purpose is there, right? So that's one of the things that I want to understand. The other thing is I want to understand, what does success look like? And are you open to testing your assumptions? So that's one of the things I kind of focus on, part of that conversation.
Understanding the motivation and the mission, understanding the goal, and then reverse engineer the roadmap based on that.
You got it. And lots of times when you might say, hey, this is the process. I want to go and get, the most common one is, I want to get more sales. I want to get more customers. I want to get more revenue. Okay, great. But how you want to do that, and the mechanism that you want to utilize to get there, and are you open to going, hey, you might have thought that this is where the business is going to go, but truly you need to shift the mandate. And the other thing as well is understanding what the solution offering looks like. That's a big one.
Yeah.
You've got, founders are phenomenal, right? They're passionate. Especially tech founders, they're very focused on the technology, and they're looking at, hey, I reckon I can build this. I can build this solution. And then you start having all of these solutions that become a complicated heap to market, sell, go to market with, right? I listen to a lot of other leaders and other podcasts, and it's all about reducing the number of solutions that you have, making it much easier for the customer to consume. It's like going back to that restaurant analogy, right? I've been to restaurants where you look at the menu and there's about 30 different items, 40 different items to look at. And you find that and my experience in the restaurant is, I'm Sri Lankan myself, and if I went to a Sri Lankan restaurant and I have 30, 40 different items, I know they'll be tasty, but they'll be cheap, cost effective. The pricing model is different. Their mechanism is different. It's more of a high volume kind of business. And you go, hey, I want this, and it's only going to cost me $10 or $15. But if you get a bill for $50 from a restaurant like that, then you're gonna say, hey, why is this the case? Whereas if you change it, there are Sri Lankan restaurants where they might only have 6 or 7 items on the menu, but charge a higher price because there's quality there. And they're focused more about the experience. They're focused more about the ambience, why you're there, why you're enjoying this. There's a story behind that meal. It could be a family recipe, or could be a region of Sri Lanka that they come from. And they're showing that in a very modern way and modern representation. And if you look at, that's a big thing to understand as well. And then talking to a founder and CEO about what they want to be, whether they want to be that menu that's 30 or 40 items, all tasty, all great, but they're very affordable, extremely affordable, and they're really designed for high volume traffic. Whereas you have the other menu, which is very specialized and focuses more on experience and history and purpose, and why that's where you as a consumer would spend more money, because you see the value in that. And just understanding what the CEO's focus is really critical. There's no right or wrong answer, but it's very important to understand that.